tonight. You are crossing a very wide place. The ground is the color of old straw, and the grass parts like a slow tide around the hooves of the herd. The sky is a pale, high bowl, blue without edges, so vast it seems to hum, like a thin string stretched from one horizon to the other. The wind does what it always does here. It comes from somewhere you cannot see, and it goes to somewhere you do not need to know. And in passing, it combs the steppe. Patient and tireless, you are a traveler in a land of long distances. A guest of families whose houses move when the seasons ask them to move. They live inside round dwellings called Gers, wooden frames wrapped in thick felt, tied with long ropes. Their doors painted in calm, careful patterns. A Ger can be taken down and packed on carts in a handful of hours, then carried across low hills and river flats, then raised again, familiar and ready, as if it had always been there, waiting. In this story, we walk slowly, we listen more than we speak, we notice small, useful things. The day begins before sunrise, as most days do on the steppe. The air is clean, and the light is pale. There is work to do, but none of it is hurried. From outside the Ger, the world is mostly wind and grass. From inside, it is felt and wood and warm breath. The roof poles, lean toward the round crown at the top. The toono, which is like a ring of sky. At night, you can see the stars through it if the smoke flap is open. At dawn, a gentle oval of light appears there first, like a lens slowly brightening. People sleep around the Gers edge on low beds and rugs. Along the lattice wall, are stacked saddles, bridles, bags, a rolled carpet, a folded cloak smelling faintly of smoke. Near the door, boots. Near the hearth, a tripod, a pot, the memory of last night's fire. In a shallow wooden bowl, a little milk has dried to a soft film. The felt walls hold the night inside until someone stirs the embers. The first person up is often the one who slept the lightest. A soft step, a mittened hand, a familiar gesture of coaxing warmth from yesterday's coals. The way you might coax a foal to take its first steps, gently, steadily, without agitation. The tinder answers with a whisper, then a thread of flame, then a small, trustworthy fire that gives a soft amber to the underside of the roof poles. Inside the Ger, everything smells like something useful: wool, leather, wood smoke, horse, milk. The day will be made from these scents and the actions that go with them. Before the wind rises, there is the first drink. It might be milk tea, a simple comfort, water and tea leaves and milk. Perhaps a pinch of salt. The steam carries heat into the morning. A wooden ladle moves clockwise in the pot, patient, untroubled by any clock. This is the kind of stirring that has no premiere and no finale. It is just the way the day softens and opens. Around the hearth, conversation is ordinary and spare. It does not need to hurry or decorate itself. Today we will look in on the herd. Today we will check the picket lines and the hobbles. Tighten a strap here. Rechalk a mark there. Later, we will see how the foals are doing and whether the new calf is steady on its legs. Later still, we will examine the sky, as if it is a book we can read. Horses first. Often, they stand like small islands in a slow-moving sea of grass. Ears turn to the sound of your steps. Tails draw gentle arcs. Some are hobbled to keep them from wandering too far. Some are tethered, some graze untied, because they know their home and their people. A foal presses its nose into its mother's flank. A small circle in a larger circle of day. You check tack with the kind of attention that adds years to leather and prevents drama later. Does the cinch look sound? Does the knot hold? Do any threads need mending? You do not discard what can be repaired. The steppe teaches endurance in materials and habits alike. A few horses are chosen for riding, calm, steady, familiar with the route. A foal watches, serious and blinking. The herd moves a little, then settles. The wind makes its long, low songs in the grass. In the distance, Other herds like punctuation, sheep in small commas, goats in exclamation points, cattle like a careful line of text marching from one page to the next. The steppe is a book written by hooves. The Gers doorway looks south, to greet light and keep out the harshest winds. The interior is arranged with a sense that things have their place and remain in that place unless there is a need to move them. On a chest, a small knife with a plain handle, polished by years of use. By the hearth, a scoop for ashes, blackened but respectable. Above, hanging where smoke dries things slowly, strips of meat, not hurried by any impatient hand. To live in a world that can move, you learn to see weight differently. A chair is not only a chair, it is something to lift and tie and balance. A trunk is not only a trunk, it is the shape of the load on a two-wheeled cart. Everything has a handle in your mind, even if it has none in wood. This makes decisions simple. Do we need this? Often means, can we carry it so that the cartwheels still sing instead of groan? In this way, the steppe teaches you not only to keep moving, but to keep light. You do not take down a house in a hurry. You speak to it in the language of ropes and knots. First the crown is loosened, then the roof poles removed together, then the lattice walls folded like an old fan. Each piece goes to its place in the cart, in an order that is remembered by hands more than by words. The felt walls fold into long breadths of wool. The ropes coil like tame snakes. Raising is the reverse. Like a song sung backward to bring memory into the present, lattice expanded, crown supported, roof poles placed one by one. As if you were building a soft-spoked wheel, felt lifted and wrapped, the white skin of a house, ropes crossing in calm X's, the doorway settled, bright and certain. This structure is strong not because it argues with the wind, but because it understands the wind, accepts its pressure, and distributes it around the circle. It is mid-morning. You are among the mares. There is a calm ritual here too. The foal is led aside for a moment, just out of reach. So the mare will stand and let down her milk. A rope halter. A murmured sound. The bucket receives what the day gives. Work is a set of very old agreements between people and animals. None of them written. All of them remembered. Some of this milk will be warmed for tea. Some will be set aside for fermentation. In a tall skin bag. The milk will learn to become soured milk or fermented mare's milk. A tang that wakes the tongue but speaks softly. Like weather in a bottle. Each time someone passes, they give the skin a shake. And time plus motion does its quiet mathematics. The herd does not keep time with a clock, it keeps time with grass. When the pasture thins, you move. When it is rich and green, you breathe deeper and let days widen. Movement, here, is not a drama. It is normal breathing. A small knife, well kept, can do almost anything a day asks. It parts rope, trims a splinter, shapes a peg, slices a strip of meat. The rope itself is like a second set of hands. Twist by twist, fiber becomes trust. You tie what you need and untie what you do not. Knots are not secrets. They are a practical vocabulary, a loop that does not slip, a hitch that holds but listens, a bend that joins two lives of cord into one. The lesson repeats itself in other materials, in wood. You read the grain, in leather. The stretch, in wool. The memory. The steppe is a school where your tools are your teachers and your work is your textbook. At midday, the land becomes very simple: wind, grass, animal, person, sky. You eat a small meal that asks for little of the fire. Broth that does not pretend to be anything else. Bread that is bread, not a performance. Fat that keeps the body in conversation with labor. You drink water that remembers snow. You rest your eyes on a line of hills that was here before names. Sometimes there is song. But it is not a performance either. It is a string instrument in a single human lap, with two strings and the carved head of a horse at its end. The song is not loud. It travels only as far as it needs to. If it goes farther, the wind will take it and turn it into something else. Meat is dried. If the air is right, it becomes lighter, safer, more portable, like a day put away for later. Bones become broth, long and patient, and the broth becomes strength. Tallow waits in a jar for a colder week. Nothing scolds you for saving, everything thanks you later. When a storm makes the world very small, on a line, leather thongs dry next to a strip of cloth that has seen 100 washings. On a rack, a wet rope sleeps into itself. On the ground, the shadow of the Gers moves inch by inch. Like the hand of a mild clock, clouds build from the west. They are not pressured to arrive on cue. They come when they like. And you receive them the way you receive a neighbor, with the courtesy of preparation. You check guy ropes. You shut the smoke hole just enough. You bring a saddle in. Not because it fears rain, but because leather is happier under felt than under sky. When the rain finally speaks, it speaks in syllables that are all the same size. The Gers answers with a soft drum pattern on its felt. Inside, the air becomes gold with fire, and the tea tastes like patience. This is not hardship. It is a lesson. What can be done slowly can be done for a very long time. If you ride this afternoon, you do not chase anything. You practice quiet control, knees talking to ribs, reins talking to neck, breath talking to breath. The horizon is just where the steppe is polite enough to pause so your eyes can rest. You do not need to reach it. You only need to take part in the distance without being devoured by it. On a knoll, you stop to look back. The Gers is a white punctuation mark where the land wrote a paragraph and then decided to rest its hand. The herd is a sentence that never quite ends, a saddle that fits more than one back, a felt mat that is both bed and blanket, a pot that understands soup, milk, tea, and water with equal grace, a needle with an eye large enough for strong thread, a small awl that makes holes and mends minutes, a whetstone that invites dullness back to a bright edge without reproach. The more a tool knows how to do, the more you can ask the world with just a small pack. A child carries a small pail with both hands. Inside, a measure of milk and the responsibility that goes with it. The calf chews the afternoon into manageable pieces. The child learns the weight of liquid and the rhythm of steps that do not waste it. Learning here is like the wind, constant, gentle, persuasive. If the child drops a ladle, someone says, calmly, "We will find it." And they do. If a knot is tied wrong, an older hand reties it without a speech. The steppe has few lectures, it has many demonstrations. At the edge of camp, there is a path. And beyond it, 1,000 choices that will, with time, turn into another path. The map is not on paper, it is in the body. You remember where the river's thin, where the grass sweetens after rain, where the wind comes clean in the afternoons. You remember a line of low hills with a stand of larch. You remember a shallow ford that feels friendly to hooves. Your legs recall slopes more accurately than any drawn contour. The day's work does not shout. It does not demand applause. It stacks itself in soft columns: gather, mend, carry, tie, check, stir, look, listen, wait. Nothing in this list is dramatic. That is the point. In a world that can harden without warning, it is the soft things that keep you. The evening returns you to the circle of the Gers. The hearth gives a steady orange to the faces around it. The pot on the tripod is not in a hurry, it is stewing something that has time to be itself. Someone adds a pinch of salt with the air of a minor priest. Someone else lifts the lid and nods, or shakes their head and lets it go a little longer. Food is served in bowls that do not match. The best bowl is the one you are using now. You eat quietly because quiet makes the taste bigger. Fat melts into the day's last edge. If there are stories tonight, they are careful with their voices. They do not jump or startle. They tell of roads and rivers. Of a winter when the snow tried to become a roof and succeeded. Of a summer when the grass grew taller than the youngest rider's belt. There are a few names in them, but not many. The steppe is the main character, and the people are its travelers. The children lean against the laps of those who are telling. The older ones listen with the learned indifference of those who have heard this all before and, even so, would like to hear it again. Outside, the toono is open just a little. The smoke exits in a thin script that the stars agree to read. The sky shows its long households, a band of pale light like a road. Constellations arrive, not with trumpets, but as if they had always been here and were merely being noticed again. The North Star holds the center. The others keep a respectful orbit. The wind quiets enough to listen to small sounds. The rope creaks once, a horse stamps, a dog breathes in a rhythm that suggests a dream of running. Your own breath becomes a little slower, a little wider. The body, like the land, is content to be quiet. Night watch is not a declaration of danger. It is a habit of care. Someone walks the perimeter with a cloak and a steady step. They carry a small light that they do not overuse. Because the eye is a better friend in darkness if treated kindly. They touch a rope and feel that it is still taut. They move a stake half the width of a hand. So morning will be easier. They stand and listen. And the listening adds itself to the work like a well-placed knot. Back inside, a bridle waits to be checked. The leather is dark where the oil has made it strong. The stitching is a series of neat, identical decisions. Your fingers travel the length of a strap and discover nothing of note. Which is the best kind of discovery on a night like this? If a crack is starting, you encourage it back toward health with oil and attention. Tools, here, are not expected to be immortal. They are expected to be kept in a good conversation with use. When sleep comes in a Gers, it does not rush. It drifts down the roof poles like a careful guest leaving no scuff. The felt walls keep the night from wandering. The hearth gives a last red eye. You make a small adjustment to the blanket and turn your face toward the inside, which is also toward the outside. Because round rooms do not have corners for worry to hide in. If you dream, it is of horses that move in a line as clean as a sentence, and of grass that folds and refolds under their hooves, and of a wind that knows your name but does not insist on saying it out loud. At first light, frost may have written its temporary alphabet on the rope outside. You will read it with your fingers and know, it is time for a warmer coat. Time to coil the breath in your scarf. Or perhaps the wind is kind today and brings a suggestion of warmth. Either way, the day is not in a hurry to declare itself. It opens with tea, water boils because it must. Leaves open because they know how. Milk turns the color of its own patience. You pour from a height just enough to aerate, not enough to scold. You drink, and the warmth writes itself down your throat in a script you can read without thinking. Someone asks for a second bowl. No one refuses. A loose stitch on a boot finds its needle. A tiny hole in a felt mat is given wool and attention. The way a cut finger is given a clean cloth. A wooden peg, slightly swollen from last week's rain, is persuaded back into shape. These are the kinds of tasks that do not show off. They prevent louder tasks later. By now the herd has arranged itself into a morning pattern. Some animals head toward the low ground, where the grass is damp and sweet. Others prefer the slight lift of a rise, where the wind keeps flies in a less confident mood. A foal makes a brief, awkward dash and then remembers dignity. A dog practices the art of being near but not too near. The landscape practices the art of being large without being overwhelming. You check the sky as if it were a ledger. You note the movement of cloud families. You feel the wind at the level of your cheekbones and consider its intent. You glance to a forage where dust sometimes means hooves you did not place there. You do not worry ahead of your information. You simply notice and let the noticing join other, older notices. Later, perhaps not today, you will pack the cart for moving camp. The cart is plain, two wheels that want to be greased. A frame that knows the difference between balanced and not. The order of load is a prayer you can say with your hands, heavy near the axle, soft on top, fragile away from corners. Ropes do their calm mathematics again, crossing and holding without any fuss. Your eye checks the wheels, spokes sound, rim firm, pin secure. Your ear listens for a certain clean note when you tap the hub. The cart is not a miracle. It is a promise. You visit the place where water lives today. A shallow stream. Not in a hurry. It has the personality of the season. In spring, it argues. In summer, it tells long stories. In winter, it keeps secrets. You fill skins and buckets and a plain kettle. You do not waste the coolness on your wrists. The herd drinks in polite shifts. Like diners who understand there will be enough. Later, you use the knife again. And it behaves. It respects the thing it is cutting. It remembers how to go straight, it remembers how to curve. You guide it the way you guide a horse, firm, but uninterested in drama. There is a low hour in the day when the steppe seems to be listening to something only it can hear. The wind pauses. The clouds pause. Even the insects make a decision to speak more quietly. This is a good time to sit and become part of the furniture of the world for a while. Your back learns the shape of the earth, which is more comfortable than most chairs. Evening again. You are back where the day began, the round room, the soft light, the careful fire. Food is simple and sufficient. The bowl is not empty when you set it down, because you prefer to save the exact last spoonful for the person who is still telling a story. They accept it without ceremony and finish their sentence, which is also their soup. Night pulls its blanket. People lie down where they lay last night, animals settle where they settled last night. The stars return to their positions with the kind of reliability that comforts more than it impresses. You close the smoke flap to the degree the weather requests. You extinguish the lamp. You do not extinguish the memory of the day, you let it fade at its own pace. If the steppe teaches anything, it is that strength and softness are not enemies. The Gers walls are soft, the structure is strong. The wind is strong, its song is soft. The work is hard, its rhythm is gentle. The people are busy, their voices are calm. The animals are wide-eyed, their trust is quiet. You live not against the land, but with it, in the last minutes. The only sounds are the ones that have always been allowed here, a horse shifting weight, a rope sighing, the wind giving a long, unbroken vowel across the grass. Your breath answers in a small vowel, close to your pillow. The toono keeps a little sky for you. It is enough. The steppe does not announce decisions with trumpets. It uses grass. When the blades near camp begin to look chewed short and pale, the answer rises as naturally as steam. It is time to give this patch a rest and offer the herd a fresh page to write on. No one hurries. The day's plan simply adjusts its posture. You walk the circle of the camp, noting what will ride on which cart, what will hang from which side, and which rope will complain if it is asked to do the same job as last time. The Gers is a puzzle you can take apart and solve again without strain. A hand touches a lattice hinge and remembers how to fold. A voice calls a horse by a name both of you understand in your bones. There is a kindness in moving often. Nothing has a chance to grow heavy with dust or complacency. You keep what you can carry. You carry what you truly use. You use what you truly need. No one rolls out a map. The path becomes visible in the act of taking it. A shallow dip becomes a road because hooves prefer it. A string of hillocks becomes a guide because the eye likes to rest on them. The carts speak in wooden syllables. Harness rings click a modest rhythm. The herd flows around the people, then through them, then ahead. Like a familiar river remembering a certain bend, if a wheel meets a rut. Hands lift in the practiced way that turns a problem into a pause and a pause into a lesson. The wind keeps pace without comment. The horizon adjusts itself. As generous as always, the new place is not far and yet newness is not measured in miles. It is measured in light. In the tilt of the hill. In the way the river speaks here compared to back there. You expand the lattice. You set the door to the south. You lift the crown. You place the poles. You wrap the felt. Each step is a sentence you know by heart. But you say it with care so that the meaning remains fresh. A rope sings a little as it tightens. The door leans. Then straightens. The hearthstone recognizes its role and waits for fire. Inside the circle, the sound of the wind becomes less urgent. Like a friend who has taken off their coat and decided to stay, felt begins as many hairs that do not agree with one another and ends as a sheet that has learned cooperation. The lesson is water, pressure, and patience. Clean wool is spread. Warm water is poured. Hands rub in little circles that do not argue, forward, back, while the fibers hook onto each other like neighbors deciding to share a fence. At first the sheet is a rumor, then a suggestion, then a cloth. You roll it, press it, unroll, and work again. The rhythm is steady and low, not a drum but a heartbeat. When the piece is done, it is strong against wind and kind to fingers. You hang it where the smoke can give it wisdom. A saddle asks for nothing more than attention at the right times. You set it on a low stand and speak to it with oil. The oil says thank you by darkening the grain and keeping it supple against weather. Stitching is checked the way you would check a sentence for clarity, each piece in its proper place. No loose ends that might twist into trouble. The girth strap gets an extra thought, the cinch ring gets a test with a quiet tug. Holes are counted. Not to reach a number but to listen for one that has stretched too far. A needle makes a new path where the old one shows fatigue. No sermon. No scolding, just craft renewing craft. When winter arrives, it does not forget to bring light, it just rearranges it. Day narrows. Edges sharpen. And the wind graduates from advice to insistence. You thicken the ger with extra felt. The smoke hole learns a repertoire of positions between open and closed. The hearth becomes a living member of the household. You learn to feed it little and often, so it does not swing from hunger to excess. Snow writes a clean sheet across the land and then keeps writing. Hoof prints are a story you can read, fresh. Rounded edges mean now, softened rims mean earlier, wind-dragged tails mean the world has been combed since. The animals gather their heat and share it with one another. You break ice on a shallow stream with a polite thud. The shard sounds like a bell when it falls aside. A pot of bone broth carries the memory of a summer animal into a winter human. You keep it near the edge of the fire so it thinks about simmering without making a speech. A handful of flour becomes dumplings that understand their purpose. Salt is never shy but never loud. Fat is not a villain, it is a quiet blanket inside the body. Tea returns again and again. Like a friend who knows how to arrive without knocking, children learn the land without being told that they are learning. They slide down a drift and discover how snow packs. They stand on one foot, then the other, balancing on a low fence, and discover how wind has opinions. A string game becomes a lesson in knots, a toy horse becomes a lesson in gait. Two small riders practice with a placid pony and a lead rope that is more idea than control. They shout, then remember the ger wall is thin, and turn shouting into laughing without losing volume in their hearts. Even chores have games hidden in them. Who can find the hobble strap first? Who can carry water without waking a ripple? Who can return a dropped glove using only the toe of a boot? The prizes are praise and the absence of correction. The dogs work in the space between bark and silence. They hold a border the way a rope holds a load, firmly, without showing off. Their ears take notes. Their eyes draw maps. A low woof means yes, I see it, a higher one means please look, a silent stare means already handled. They are paid in scraps and affection, and in the right to sleep close to the warm side of the ger when the night has opinions. They do not count their wages, they count their people. At night you step outside and tip your head. The cold sharpens the stars into phrases you can sound out. The North Star keeps its post. The herd of bright lights along the sky's long road drifts, but not aimlessly. You recognize the shape that has belonged to hunters in stories and another that has belonged to a plow in others. The names matter less than the reliability. A soft ring of frost gathers on the Gers sky ropes. Breath becomes a small, temporary cloud and then remembers how to be invisible again. If there is a moon, it spreads a pale lacquer across the snow. And the world accepts being made simple. In a corner, the tall skin of fermented milk hangs like a quiet instrument. Each passerby gives it a shake, adding momentum to the day's chemistry. Curds separate from whey. The whey becomes a broth for a future day, the curds become something that can travel without complaint. The sharpness of the flavor is not a scold, it is a clean line through the soft. If there is airag, fermented mare's milk, it is poured without ceremony. It carries a bright note. Like the first step after sitting too long. You take only as much as belongs to this moment. Nothing is rushed toward forgetfulness. A traveler appears at the edge of sight, a small figure leading a larger animal. The wind is courting both. There is no debate about what to do. The door opens because a door is for opening. A bowl is poured because bowls understand their job. A guest sits to the left of the doorway. Because a house is a memory for the community and remembers where guests belong. You do not interrogate. You do not applaud. You provide warmth and food at the level that steadies the voice. Later come names and destinations and the small news a road carries in its pockets. In this way, information is exchanged as gently as tea. Objects also receive courtesy. A knife is not placed blade up. A rope is coiled so it won't learn bad habits. A saddle is set seat down, not dumped. The fire is thanked without words by keeping its area clean. The door is not slammed because wind already does the job too often. Order is not a performance. It is the habit that lets you find what you need in the dark without turning the dark into an enemy. You remember a caravan that came through last warm season. Bells small as raindrops along the strap of a lead camel. They traded cloth with a pattern your jaw had not seen before and a spice that turned soup into an invitation. They move as if the distance between two cities had become a string tied loosely between their fingers. The memory remains not because of the exotic but because of the ordinary. They laughed at the same part of a story everyone laughs at. They complained about wind that was ordinary here and impolite there. They asked after water as if speaking to a mutual friend. Then they went on. And the horizon closed behind them in the way it always does, kindly. Without drama. Tracking is a way of reading margins. You notice where a hoof slid in clay then corrected, an animal surprised by its own weight. You notice a set of small bird prints circling a patch of snow where the wind had kept the ground bare. You notice the brush stroke of a tail along powder. A signature without letters. None of these observations produce alarms. They produce competence. Competence is a blanket you can wear even when the air decides to test your layers. Fibers twist best when the hands stay calm. Hair, sinew, or plant strips, they all learn one another in the twist. You roll strands along your thigh and let them find their agreement. The rope thickens from talk into consensus. When it is long enough, you test it with a respectful pull. It does not argue. It accepts the job it has been promised. A good rope does not need praise, it just needs to be kept dry and coiled with a little kindness. At night a mooring coo comes out, a two-stringed instrument with a carved horse head at its top. As if the herd had decided to send an ambassador to the room. The bow draws a sound that knows both the wind and the stall. Both outside and inside. The melody does not show off. It steps carefully up and down a small set of stones. Polishing them as it passes, someone hums. Someone mends. Someone falls asleep in the middle of a stitch and wakes with the needle still respectfully waiting in their fingers. Spring is a slow letter the land writes in green ink. Patches of color spread. Stitched together by meltwater threads. Foals arrive with knees too long for their bodies and eyes too serious for their age. Lambs argue about nothing and win. Calves practice standing still. Which is harder than it looks. You loosen what winter tightened, ropes. Shoulders. Faces. You open the smoke hole wider and let the sun examine the inside of the jar. You carry rugs outside and beat the season out of them with sticks. Sending small clouds of dust into a wind that knows where to put everything. A child is lifted onto a broad, patient mare. A lead rope is a sentence that begins, this way. And the mare agrees in a language she learned long before today. The child holds the mane and discovers how balance is not a pose but a conversation. 100 small circles later. The child steps down taller by a kind of measure not captured on any stick. Someone claps once. Not to celebrate, but to confirm the day's new fact. A wheel has a complaint, a spoke sings a wrong note. You lay it on its side and listen with your hands. The hub is good. The rim is stout. The spoke needs a new partner. Wood grows straight if you ask nicely. You ask a spare length that has waited its turn. A little shaving. A little tapping. A little oil. And the circle remembers itself. Everything here is some kind of circle, wheels. Seasons. The Gers. The path of the herd. The routine of tea. Even problems tend to come back in familiar shapes, which makes solutions feel like neighbors instead of strangers. A spring rain approaches by rearranging the smell of the air. Dust retires. The world becomes a little metallic at first, then green. You secure what asks to be secured and let the rest enjoy the rinse. The felt darkens, then brightens as drops find their place. The dogs make a decision about which side of the door is wiser. The fire accepts a smaller role and becomes an ember narrative. Inside, voices lower themselves as if the room has grown deeper. You embroider a small pattern on a saddle cloth. Not for show, but so your eye has a quiet place to rest each time you mount. A story is told in the present tense about something that occurred long ago. As if the past prefers not to be fenced by grammar. Disagreements arise as weather does, by pressure and direction. They pass the same way, by movement and release. You do not shout unless distance forces it. You do not store a quarrel where food is stored or where tools sleep. You leave it outside for the wind to think about. And often the wind returns it improved or not at all. No one writes this as a law. Everyone knows it as a custom. And custom wears more comfortably than law. Every so often, there is a gathering that pretends to be a market but is also a reunion. Goods arrive riding on backs and in bundles. Cheese with a new idea about flavor. Felt with a border stitched by a cousin's cousin. A pot from a brown river town far to the south. You trade stories before prices. News before weights. If a bargain asks to be hard, you soften it with tea. At the end of the day, the camp grows heavier with new things and lighter with surplus. The real profit is the names you can now attach to rumors. Distance here is not a threat, it is a resource. It allows time to become thought. It gives conversations a wide field where they can stretch their legs. It teaches you that arrival is not the opposite of travel. The herd knows this. The wheels know this. Even the kettle knows this. Patiently making the same sound today that it made yesterday. Not because it is trapped, but because it is true. Evening comes like a practiced hand folding a blanket, edges aligned, corners smoothed, nothing forced. The Gers glows as if remembering summer wheat. Bowls return to their shelf. The dogs inventory the dark with their noses and sign off with a single satisfied huff. The wind decides to be a lullaby and not a lecture. Someone draws the bow across the strings once, twice, and then decides that silence is the song the night requested. The last tea is the smallest and the best. It tastes like completion. You bank the fire as if giving it a small pillow. Ashes settle in the posture of rest. The toono opens the width of 2 fingers. Just enough for breath to find the stars. You lie down where your body remembers lying down. The blanket knows the shape of you and takes its place without instruction. The world narrows to felt and wool and a low red glow that promises to become tomorrow's flame. Outside, hooves shift. A quiet arithmetic of weight and comfort. Farther out, the grass combs the wind the way the wind has always asked to be combed. The sky leans over the toono like a patient guardian. It does not count your breaths, it keeps you company while you count fewer and fewer of them. Spring does not arrive with a parade. It arrives by subtracting frost from rope and adding green to the bottoms of hills. Hooves step more confidently on ground that has remembered itself. The Gers walls breathe a little easier when the door is propped wide. You air blankets as if returning birds to the sky for an hour. In the mornings, the light slips in wearing fewer coats. In the evenings, The kettle sings a longer song before you ask it to quiet down. Work is the same work, but the fingers feel more nimble, and leather loses its winter stiffness without complaint. Mares stand away from the busier part of camp. Not secretive, only practical. Their shadows move slowly across grass that is just learning to be tall again. A foal unfolds from itself with the serious eyes common to all new things. Legs long as promises find the ground with a thoughtful wobble. The herd keeps a respectful circle, the way people do when someone is trying a new skill. You do nothing dramatic. You watch. You wait. You soften a voice and shorten your steps. The foal finds milk as if guided by a map that came printed on its bones. The mare snorts a gentle punctuation mark, and the page turns itself, before the wind gathers its thoughts. You have yours. Lines of small duties step forward. Not in a rush. Check the pickets. Look at the fetlock that was tender last week. Rub oil into the girth where it asked for kindness. Pull a loose thread from the edge of a felt panel and commit it to the fire. None of this is news. That is why it works. A good day is not a masterpiece, it is a pattern you can recognize by touch in the dark. You hold to it lightly. The way a rider holds a rein, firm enough to guide, soft enough to listen. You own no instruments but have a weather station in your skin. Cheeks read the angle of cold, eyelids read grit, ears read distance by how the air writes sound. A hard wind makes even small things speak louder, a soft wind hides distances inside itself. You learn which gusts are temporary opinions and which are policies for the day. When a squall passes, the world is rinsed, and horses look briefly sculpted. Then the softness returns, as if the steppe had decided to exhale again. On a saddle cloth, you add a border, just a few calm shapes that make the edge behave. The thread is waxed, the needle knows where to go next because your hand remembers the last time. Patterns here are not signatures in the proud sense. They are notes to the future. This is ours. This is tended. This will be recognized when the cart is full and the dusk is busy. When you knot the last thread, you lay the cloth flat and wait for it to agree with itself. It does. Strips of meat hang in obedient lines. Smoke moves around them like a patient teacher. Salt has already done its clear work. What remains is time, which performs change without noise. You test a piece not by tearing, but by listening. Does the fiber separate as if it has decided to? If yes, you nod a small nod and say nothing further to the afternoon. Jars receive what needs jars. Pouches receive what needs pouches. The future thanks you in advance by diminishing the sharpness of winter's voice when it returns. The herd knows the way to water so well that your role is only to confirm what they already intend. Hooves drum a thoughtful music down a shallow slope. A stream greets them with the same melody as last year, but perhaps in a slightly different key. You watch for churned mud that might trap a smaller hoof, and your eyes do the future a favor. When a horse lowers its head, the world becomes simple: animal, water, sky, time. This simplicity feeds more than one thirst. A sky-long arrow passes, migrants returning from a book you have not read but trust. Their bodies write a moving sentence across the pale page, and the punctuation of their calls is confident but not boastful. Dogs make a note, children point without needing to be told what pointing is for. Feathers left in grass are not trash, they are small documents. You pick one up, smooth its veins into agreement, and set it where the wind cannot argue with it further. A small hand is shown a big knot. It frowns, tries, fails, and then tries the smaller cousin of that knot and succeeds. The lesson is not humbling, it is sized correctly. Water is carried in a cup before it is carried in a bucket. Wool is teased in a handful before a blanket's worth is offered. Praise arrives warm but quiet. Corrections arrive cooler, but never cold. Games continue, a race to see who can coil a rope into the neatest sleeping snail, a contest to find a stone that fits a palm as if made for it. These things teach posture, grip, and the important skill of not dropping your patience. You touch the handle of the axe and remember last autumn's wood. You touch the awl and remember where a leather seam needed new holes to be less argumentative. Tools that are trusted require 3 kinds of attention: before, during, after. You give each without ceremony. The whetstone murmurs. The blade answers with a cleaner line. You end when the tool agrees. Not when a clock does. At noon the Gers shadow is a gently rounded bowl beside it. Someone naps there for 10 minutes that feel like a treaty. Someone else mends a hem without finishing it. On purpose. So the afternoon has something to look forward to. You drink water. Slow as reading a letter out loud. And let the cool make quiet decisions in your limbs. From far away they are dots, at conversation distance they are people. You straighten from your task but do not abandon it, they slow without announcing. Greetings are shallow and warm. Where from? Where to? Grass good that way. Rain visiting soon behind us. Thank you. No one holds the other hostage with talk. Road manners are like tying a good knot, firm, quick, useful. You watch them diminish into punctuation again and trust that someone down the line will read their news where you have written yours. You take a little ride with no ambition beyond being the right weight above the right back. The mare understands the day's vocabulary: walk, pause, look, walk. A lap around the outer edge of the herd gathers information without making a list, a tail switch that says flies have opinions again. A twitch at a flank that says a small sore is politely requesting notice. A youthful animal demonstrating speed to no audience. You return without drama and dismount into your own shadow, which accepts you as usual. You measure length by unrolling rope along your forearm and counting folds. A loop becomes a promise. A series of knots become a map. The noseband lies flat, the cheek pieces travel straight, the Theodore knot sits like a calm star under the jaw. When you try it on the most patient gelding, he blinks once as if to say, yes, this will do. You run a hand along the rope to persuade away any roughness. The halter hangs near the door where good ideas wait their turn. Sheep like to add themselves to one another until they are a sum. Goats like to subtract from that sum and add to curiosity somewhere else. You count without counting, the group looks right. The movement looks right. The sound is free of alarm. A lamb's voice mistakes the world for a problem. And the world corrects it within a dozen steps. Your staff is not a weapon. It is a sentence ender that prefers periods to exclamation points. The pot has been saying the same gentle things for an hour. You answer with bowls. Meat that has boiled into generosity meets dumplings that have learned to hold their shape without getting proud. A little chopped something green turns the surface into a small meadow. Fat makes its calm argument for usefulness and wins. The table is the floor. The chairs are the ground. And comfort is the way people arrange themselves. Good tales tonight are about mistakes that grew up into techniques. A strap once tied wrong that revealed a better way to secure a load, a shortcut that wasn't. Becoming a path to water by accident, a time a storm argued and lost because someone banked the Gers leeward edge just a hand's width more than usual. Laughter occurs. But softly. As if to avoid waking a lesson that is sleeping. Children listen with the kind of attention that adults call wisdom because it looks like stillness. Stars suggest order. You hang the pot lid on its peg that aligns. By coincidence and custom. Beneath a certain nail. You place boots by the door like a small constellation that points toward morning. You lay out tomorrow's coil of rope in a spiral that opens toward the east. None of this is superstition, all of it is about remembering. When you step outside, the band of pale, many stars light lays across the world like a gentle belt. You adjust your coat by one button and feel perfect, a rotation as natural as breath. This person tonight, that person tomorrow. A simple lamp, a walking stick more for company than for defense. A circle described slowly in the dark. You listen to absence and measure it carefully, it has a sound of its own. A horse stamps once. A dog's ear makes a decision. The ropes hum a chord so quiet it could be memory. You return the lamp to its place and add a small stick to the hearth. The ember approves. You see small tasks lined up in tomorrow's doorway. A strap. A peg. The slight lift of a car trail that wants a wedge of wood beneath it. You nod to them and do not begin. Not starting is also a skill. Morning has hands better suited for some kinds of care. Night asks for different strength, patience, listening. Not spending the body's warmth too quickly. You have what you need. If you do not, you know how to ask the road, the herd, or a neighbor without bending anyone out of shape. Enough is not a compromise, it is a posture that keeps the back sound and the mind unfrantic. You practice it the way you practice sitting a saddle, daily. Lightly. With interest but without strain. The fire's language is simple and exact. Feed. Breathe. Rest. You rake hash over a coal as if tucking a child. The red dims to a thoughtful core. The iron tripod keeps its place. A small black geometry in the orange. You set tomorrow's kindling within reach and leave it alone. Trusting that you will not forget the future you just arranged. Bedding is straightened by hands that have learned generosity from grass. Cloaks are folded in a way that keeps shoulders from arguing in the morning. The door is checked. The smoke hole set to a compromise any sky would admire. People become quieter than their thoughts and then quieter than their breathing. The Gers seems to float a little on the sea of night. It is not, it is anchored by habit and rope. Still, the feeling is pleasant. You lie down like someone who knows how. The blanket receives your weight and returns approval in warmth. Muscles travel toward a small country where tasks do not follow. If thoughts come, they are led by the hand to the door and shown the stars for a while, which usually softens them into silence. Outside, wind composes a lullaby unique to this hour and this place, but familiar in spirit to anyone who has listened to grass. Morning returns like a careful friend. The toono shows a pale coin of light before anything else does. A bird rehearses a line and then performs it twice. Convinced, you sit up into warmth that the hearth kept in its pocket all night. Tea resumes its duties as if it had never paused. You breathe and the day fits. The old pattern looks new on this particular page. Sometimes the road asks for more days than usual. Then the Gers becomes kit, walls folding, roof poles counting themselves into bundles. Felt learning to be manageable once more. The cart receives. The lashings cross in balanced agreements. Saddlebags choose pairs like dance partners. Water skins line up with the dignity of soldiers in an unhurried army. You walk a last small circle and find nothing out of place. You put a hand on the door one moment longer. Then lift it down. A house becomes luggage, no crisis. Only design, on the move. Conversation spreads itself thin and comfortable. You speak a sentence. Then walk 2 hills. Then finish it. Someone whistles a tune that resembles the wind and the hooves approve. Dogs perform side errands of curiosity and return on time without being asked to explain. The herd flows at the speed of grass being satisfied, which is perfectly adequate. Distance shrinks kindly. Hills practice the art of coming nearer. Shade is a coin under a cart. You sit on it and eat a meal that fits in one hand. Water is passed with thrift that never becomes stinginess. A hoof is lifted. A small stone removed. A thanks given to no one in particular. The world is a great green ledger stamping paid in a calm hand. Children nap where they fell, which is always the right place. The new campground presents itself modestly, a crooked willow. A slope that suggests drainage. A view the eye likes to keep. You set the door where the sun and wind prefer, not where pride would point it. The circles rebuild themselves, lattice out, crown up, poles in, felt on, ropes over, hearth ready. In less time than it would take to tell a long story. The long story is told. Everyone stands back a step and feels the world say yes. The stream here speaks a different dialect, more stones in the voice, more silver in the shallows. You fill skins and laugh at a dog who forgot how cold spring water is and relearns enthusiastically. You wash your face and are given a new one. The herd drinks, the land drinks the herd in return. The sun warms your back as if repeating a promise it has kept for countless generations. The Morinku plays lines that could only belong to this day. The bow speaks hoarse, wind, and the memory of winter. A voice joins, not to sing loudly, but to align something inside the chest with something outside in the dark. Children, finally quiet, arrange themselves like sleepy punctuation along a rug. The last cup of tea tastes faintly of smoke and patience. You put a hand on the wither in passing and check warmth. You glance at an eye and see clarity. You feel the rope and sense its health. Nothing dramatic occurs. The sacred here is in repetition. If you repeat kindness often enough, it hardens into safety. If you repeat attention often enough, it softens trouble before it ripens. Night settles neatly. The Gers is a low star in the grass, a domestic constellation of glow and breath. Hooves arrange themselves into comfortable equations. Dogs choose corners that fit their ideas of duty. The wind lengthens its vowel and keeps it steady. Inside, the ember blinks its last red thought and folds under ash like a wise animal sleeping. Your body signs a treaty with the bed. The toono holds a small, loyal circle of sky just for you. The grass has finished its main sentences and now speaks in comfortable paragraphs. Seeds lean, heavy with their own plans. The herd understands the season without a calendar. Their coats shine in the slanted light that makes every ridge look kindly older. You lengthen the evening by 1 cup of tea. You shorten the list of urgent chores. Leather is content. Ropes are content. People are content. Late summer is the land's way of smiling with its whole face. Blocks of salt sit like pale stones at the edge of camp. Animals visit as they please, learning moderation from their own tongues. A child counts the visits and decides, with the seriousness of youth, that the brown cow is the wisest because she never hurries away from anything that helps. You scratch the cow's neck and agree. Without debate, shearing arrives with bright, practical tools and a posture of patience. Sheep are cradled into stillness, not forced. Steel whispers along wool, fleece unrolls like a quiet map. Hands learn the economy of the right angle, backs learn the kindness of taking turns. Rolled fleeces sit in a neat family, waiting to become warm futures. Straight tufts drift on the breeze and decorate the day. Dogs watch, approving the order of it all, at the stream. Wool learns water. It releases dust and old weather. On a flat rock, you press and lift, never twisting, never scolding. Sun and wind finish the work you began. Later, carders, wood and wire, comb the fibers until they stack like small clouds, eager to be joined. Spindles spin because fingers invite them to. Twist holds. Yarn appears. And time becomes cloth the way rain becomes grass. Wool bats overlap like careful shingles. Hot water persuades. Hands encourage. A reed mat rolls everything into firmness. Feet and palms provide the rhythm. Work songs, barely louder than breath, settle everyone into agreement. When the mat unrolls, a sheet of felt looks up with the face of a patient companion. It knows rain, wind, and how to be tied well. It asks for nothing but use. A low pot holds color coaxed from plants, a brown that resembles earth after rain, a yellow that remembers flowers without imitating them too loudly. A soft red learned from a root that keeps its secrets unless asked gently. Cloth dips, thinks, and emerges older in the best way. You hang pieces along a rope, the wind reads them like flags spelling out the word every day. You lay out what goes and what stays. The list is not written, it is recited by objects finding their place. A trusted pot that understands tea, milk, and soup. A knife with a bright mind and an honest edge. A needle roll, thread, awl, and a small whetstone that never argues. 2 ropes, 1 thick for promises, 1 thin for persuasion. A spare hobble. A halter that remembers cooperation. Felt pads. A blanket that knows backs. A cloak that respects wind. A flint and steel in a pouch that closes with confidence. Dried meat. A pouch of flour. A small bag of salt. And the kind of tea that tastes like home even when the horizon is new. A skin for water. Another for milk. A third that likes to be useful to surprises, packed. The bundle looks moderate. Carried. It feels like competence. The simple hitch that listens but lets go when asked. The clove hitch that holds a pole like an old friend's elbow. The figure eight that refuses to become a mistake. The bowline that makes a loop with a memory. You tie each without thinking and then think about how not thinking arrived only after many repetitions. Knots are the steps handwriting. Your ropes compose in a steady script. Kana, the folding lattice. Like a patient accordion. Uni, roof poles that learn to lean toward the center without jealousy. Toono, the crown. The circle that keeps sky in a friendly place. Bagana, support posts where needed. Like quiet elders, felt walls, the soft strength that turns wind into music. Door, painted wood that learns south for politeness and warmth. Saying the names feels like sweeping a room, the space grows clearer while you do it. The North Star, trustworthy. The anchor that does not need to brag. The plough, a shape that teaches the season and the hour. The band of many lights, some call it a river. Some a road, you call it practice for traveling with your eyes closed. You do not master the sky. You befriend it. It repays friendship with direction, now and then. You stop by a small, respected place. Stones stand modestly, scarves move in the wind as if bowing. You bring a simple offering, a thread of milk, a quiet thought, and ask for the uncomplicated gifts, safe hooves, honest weather, courage that looks like patience. No one commands the past here. You let it sit beside you and share tea, first in the shadows of hill bases, then on the flanks, then along the gullies. Color deepens. The air sharpens its remarks without becoming rude. Your hands remember where the heavier coats live. Ropes ask for a little more oil. Saddles enjoy the same favor. The herd chews more seriously. As if reading the last pages of a good book before the library closes for winter, before the cold. Choices are made, not in a hurry. Not with a hard heart. Animals are assessed with the quiet literacy of those who know stewardship. Some are kept for breeding. Some for strength. Some for the table that keeps the rest alive through the deep months. Gratitude is the ceremony. Waste is the only taboo. Bones become broth, fat becomes light and warmth, hide becomes days of shelter, sinew becomes thread. Nothing leaves the circle of usefulness. A pot receives bones, water, and a handful of time. Fire offers a gentle handshake. Hours pass in low agreement. The liquid turns clear into strong. Steam carries a promise to cold hands that they will not be alone later. You skim. You taste. You nod. A jar is filled. A bowl is filled. The room is filled with the scent of provision, with dusk arriving earlier. Dogs draw the border in closer. They regard shadows as questions to be answered calmly. Their roots tighten, their eyes shine with the lantern's song. A single bark means inquiry, 2 means confidence, 3 means attention please. Rarely does it mean alarm. And when it does, the alarm is correct. You soften a palm along a warm head. The dog accepts the thanks and keeps the patrol. You pull the extra felt panels and check for thin spots with a hand and a candle. You rehearse closing the smoke flaps to the settings the worst nights will request. You practice the shortest route from sleeping place to fuel with bare feet so that in true cold, the body will not waste thought. If anything protests, you fix it now. Winter is generous to those who respect rehearsal. The caravan lengthens slightly, the pace shortens slightly. You choose a slope with a back against the meanest wind and a view friendly to herds. Water nearby but not too close. Dry dung enough in the old scatter to promise easy fuel until snow answers the task. You raise the circle and feel the camp settle. Like a cloak found in a familiar fold, frost writes its temporary book on every rope and blade. You read a page with your breath and erase it a little. Morning tea tastes brighter when the cup is a small stove for hands. The hearth's first true winter fire receives 3 pieces, 1 for warmth, 1 for light, 1 for company. The flame understands the grammar and behaves. Children play board games scratched into a plank. Stones and bones for pieces. Adults mend and swap stories about work that became easier a decade back when someone discovered a better knot. Laughter lives at low volume but high frequency. Outside, the wind makes ambitious plans. Inside, patience keeps its promises. Flakes begin as polite visitors, then invite their cousins. The Gers roof learns a soft weight that it is built to know. Ropes hum in a new key. Dogs choose inside, then change their minds, then choose inside again. Horses turn their umps to the weather and consider philosophy. You bank the hearth early and add 1 more small stick after that because a good plan always gets a friend. The toono becomes a small moon, diffusing snow light into the room. By morning, the world is paper. Tracks write themselves across it, fox in cursive, hare in punctuation, hooves in steady print. You walk the perimeter with the calm of someone grading homework you assigned. Nothing is alarming. Everything is informative. Back inside, tea pours like an approving stamp. Cows and mares give what they can. You ask only what keeps everyone honest. Milk stretches with water and tea into a breakfast that warms the front and the back of a person at once. Fermentations slow but never stop. You respect their winter tempo and shake the skin less often. With more gratitude, you tie a tag on the rope coil, good through 1 more winter. You scratch a mark on a cart beam, tightened after the early snow. You place a stone near a path, drift forms here, step wide. These are letters to the person who will be you when the wind has a different idea. They will arrive on time, if someone appears through the white. The door opens before the name. Gloves come off so hospitality can be felt skin to skin with bowls and blankets. Stories wait until cheeks have remembered the idea of thaw. Then names are exchanged like gifts without wrapping. The news is small and therefore perfect, a calf with a star on its forehead. A knot that has learned to behave. A stream that favors the east bank this year, before the year turns. You honor the things that carried it. The knife, wiped bright and oiled. The pot, scrubbed to a quiet metal, set back with a pat of cloth. The rope, coiled and let to sleep. The saddle, a thin brush of grease along seams that do the hardest listening. You say nothing out loud. The silence says everything necessary. Seasons will fold and unfold. Hooves will write long stories and erase them with the same care. The jaw will rise and rest like a slow breath. People will become older without becoming hard. Dogs will measure the dark and report fairly. Tea will be the circle that connects all of it to all of it. When you open the door, your breath becomes a small white creature that walks ahead and then disappears. The ropes carry thin collars of frost that will be gone by mid-sun. Hooves stamp. Not impatient. Only reminding blood to travel. The kettle decides to hum while you look east. Light arrives by degrees. As if it had been folded many times and is being unfolded without tearing. Inside, the felt has kept yesterday's warmth the way a careful hand keeps a note for later. You do not count the herd with numbers first. You count with pattern. The elder mare where she likes to stand. The 2 yearlings who always pretend not to know which direction the day begins. The ox with the kind eye that finds you before you find him. Then, if a number is wanted, it is already there. Wearing its familiar coat, a lamb calls and receives an answer from the correct throat. The ledger of morning closes itself. A thong has thinned where it loops a stirrup. You replace it before it fails. Not because you expect drama, but because you dislike being unfair to leather that has done its job. The new thong is persuasive and modest. The old one becomes something else, a binding for a bundle, a tie for a doormat, a lesson for a child in how things return as other things. In this way, waste stays a stranger. The mare snorts a polite question. You answer with a halter and a voice that keeps yesterday's friendship intact. Foam collects at the rim of the bucket as if the morning were congratulating itself. A child holds the foal's attention with a tuft of grass. eyes solemn. Duty understood. Someone tells a very small joke, the Gers door frame smiles. The first bowl of tea tastes like something accomplished without hurry. You walk a short distance with little feet beside you. Step where the crust holds, listen where it doesn't. Cross the trickle at the shallow fan. Not the narrow cut, the narrow looks easier but keeps secrets under ice. Read the grass, bent means the wind has been here longer, straight means it has just arrived. You do not write these notes down. You place them where a body keeps them safe. 2 sticks and a twist of grass become a flame the size of a coin becomes a palm becomes a bowl of light. You add a branch only when the fire asks politely. It is pleasant. This mutual courtesy, no scolding. No sulking. Only the mathematics of enough. The iron tripod looks pleased to be useful again. Paws print an oval around camp. The track of a promise kept without being advertised. The dog pauses to read the night's footnotes along the fence of snow by the willow. Satisfied. It shakes the dark from its coat and returns to lie across the threshold, half inside, half out, like a bookmark saving your page in the world. You scratch a near in passing. The ear acts as if the universe has been set right. A hoof is lifted. Supported on your knee, the pick writes clean lines between the frog and the wall. Ice crumbs fall like small bells. You find a stone the size of a bean that had been telling the horse a dull story, you remove it. And both of you feel more intelligent. The shoe sits square, the nail heads are honest, the hoof says thank you by being quiet. You set the foot down the way you would set down a sleeping child, near the ground before the ground itself. Midday is a soft arrival. Without announcement. Like a friend who knows which shelf holds the bowls. The sun sketches the shadow of the toono on the floor, it moves a hand width in the length of a story. Soup mentions bones and herbs and the good patience of water. Bread agrees. And the table, being the ground, approves all treaties. A hawk writes one long sentence across the sky and puts down its period on a distant post. A seam along a saddlebag is invited to become itself again. Thread travels like a calm river through the leather banks. You double back at the stress point. The way a traveler doubles checks a ford. When you tie off, the knot lies down with its face toward the load, not toward the eye. You hang the bag on its peg, the peg remembers. By late afternoon the wind has chosen a different coat, less sharp, more talkative. It brings the smell of animals from the west. Not threatening. Simply news. You step onto a rise and see them. Small as commas in the far sentence. You nod to the distance. It nods back. The dog interprets. Files the information. And returns to the present. Big hands tie a bowline with small movements. The loop holds the way a good memory holds, secure without making a fist. You show how to dress the knot so it wears well. You pull slow. Not to test strength, but to teach the rope what work feels like under kindness. Ropes that learn under kindness remember under strain. Before dark. You walk the herd without counting. Then count without walking. A tail. A scar. A patch of white. A twitch of ear. This is arithmetic you learn very early and never put down. Nothing is missing, nothing is over. The day agrees to end. You tell the kettle. And the kettle agrees to begin. Steam rises like a vow kept. Dumplings surface and settle. Surface and settle. Like thoughts that have decided to behave. Meat that was careful in the pot is careful in the bowl. Salt bows. Never salutes. The spoon compliments the hand that made it by fitting perfectly and asking nothing else. The quiet at the meal is not absence. It is gratitude without speeches. A story about a foal who once mistook the moon for a lamp and tried to follow it. A story about a rope that refused to coil left-handed until shown how to enjoy it. A story about a storm that argued. And a Gers that listened so well the storm forgot its point. Laughter arrives like a warm draft. It leaves the door closed behind it. When the door opens, the sky shows its long memory. The band of many lights has rearranged itself into precisely what it always is. The North Star holds court. Courteous and unexcited. You draw the smoke flap half over. Exactly enough. The Ger breathes. The outside breathes. Between them, your own breath chooses the right pace. The dog checks the edge of night once more and decides it is doing fine. Night watch again. With the same lamp. The same path made new by being walked slowly. The snow whispers underfoot. A parchment announcing each step without tattling. Far off, a fox writes its name in the cold and moves on. You answer with stillness. Which is the correct language? When you return, the ember blinks and then closes its one red eye. Trusting you with the dark, bedding accepts your shape as if it had been waiting all day to do so. Wool and felt hold a truce with air. The last sound you choose is the smallest spoon set onto the smallest bowl. The last thought you choose is a rope well coiled. Above, the toono keeps a coin of night for you. It will still be there when you wake, but smaller. And then it will be light, days later. Weather loosens its belt. Snow recedes to the shadows like a polite guest leaving room for conversation. Water remembers how to talk in more than one voice, trickle at the edge. Chuckle at the stone. Hush under thin ice. You step where stepping is invited. Mud tries to introduce itself to your boot, you accept the handshake and walk on. The herd lifts their heads more often to consult distance. Distance says yes. Grease finds the hub, the wheel sings a lower note. You test it by walking beside. Hand on rim. Listening for a complaint. The rim is sure. The spokes are in agreement. The pin is a confident punctuation mark. A line of rope crosses the load like simple music. Nothing rattles, nothing sulks, when the cart moves. The day moves with it. Unbothered, standing is a skill. You reward the smallest correct stillness with a breath. Then with a hand on the neck. Then with the absence of more demands. The young horse learns that doing nothing well is sometimes the highest work. So do people. You step away and the horse chooses to remain. This is the first chapter of many good stories you will have together, at crossings. Your eyes and the water make a treaty. You watch the upstream drift of grass, you read the bow of current around a rock, you listen where the sound deepens. The herd trusts the treaty because you do. Hooves lower into cold clarity, the line holds gentle, the exit bank is chosen for gratitude. Not speed. On the far side, everyone shakes water off in their own way. The sun takes the rest. You sew a new curtain for the door, felt lined with a strip of something bright along the edge. It is not decoration only, it is a place for the eye to rest in winter. A streak of summer kept from last year and loaned to the next. The stitches agree with one another. Neat but not military. The cloth hangs, the door looks newly certain of its job. The room changes by one quiet degree. Some tasks return daily, others stay finished for a kindly while. Today you chase the latter, a fence peg that will remember angles. A lash rope that will not forget where it prefers to live. A shelf that was promised and is now delivered. You move around the Ger like punctuation. Placing commas where breath should go and periods where the day deserves to end a sentence. When you sit, the floor approves your choice of spot. Two riders appear with packs that smell of towns, soap with opinions. Cloth with patterns that have not met this horizon. You trade cheese for a skein of thread. Felt for a small mirror whose face makes children laugh. The prices are fair because the news is good. A bridge mended. A ford marked. A family well after a hard winter. They ride on and leave behind a word that means see you when the grass is taller. The Morinku speaks again. Not to surprise. Only to confirm. The two strings find a place between wind and breath and become a road for thoughts that do not wish to wear boots. Someone hums harmony like a second fire. Someone else closes their eyes and mends a sleeve by feel. The dog sighs. Which in this language means everything is accounted for. You look around, rope, leather, wood, wool, water, fire, wind, stars, animals, people. The list is not long, it is complete. The Ger is small and therefore large. The steppe is large and therefore simple. You drink the last tea and put the lid on the pot the way you put closure on a day, gently, without argument. Sleep comes across the grass like a friend from far away who never gets lost. If dreams arrive, they use tools correctly: a well-tied knot, a wheel that keeps its circle, a door that opens south. They leave everything where they found it. You wake once to hear the wind practicing a song for morning. Then return to the deep, round room where work has already been done and will wait calmly to be done again. The toono keeps the last thin coin of dark and then, kindly, spends it on light.